In a significant announcement, India has confirmed that it has agreed to a ceasefire with Pakistan starting at 1700 hours Indian Standard Time. The ceasefire has come into effect on land, air and sea. Confirming this development, India said that Pakistan's DGMO had called his Indian counterpart at about 3:35 p.m. IST and had agreed to a ceasefire from 5 p.m. IST.
Military Operations of Pakistan called the Director General of Military Operations of India at 15:35 hours earlier this afternoon. It was agreed between them that both sides would stop all firing and military action on land and in the air and sea with effect from 1700 hours Indian Standard Time today. Instructions have been given on both sides to give effect to this understanding. The Directors General of Military Operations will talk again on the 12th of May at 1200 hours. Thank you.
Now, shortly after India's External Affairs Minister S Jaishankar put out, India has consistently maintained a very firm and an uncompromising stance against terrorism in all of its forms and manifestations, and it will continue to do so. Now, the announcement first came from the American President Donald Trump, who took to Truth Social to announce the truce. Now, Trump said that India and Pakistan have agreed to a full and an immediate ceasefire after days of heightened tensions and cross-border attacks from both sides. Now, Pakistan's Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar confirmed the ceasefire on his X handle, saying that both nations have agreed to a ceasefire with immediate effect. The ceasefire has come after 4 days of intense conflict between the two nuclear-armed neighbours. India launched the Operation Sindoor on the 6th and the 7th of May in retaliation to the Pahalgam terror attack that killed 26 people. All right, now WION Sudant is joining us with more details about this ceasefire. Sudant, this is of course a big development. Give us a sense of what's in fact gone through behind the scenes. What's been done behind the scenes for this ceasefire to now come into effect?
Well, Mohammed, it has been long 4 days and pretty long day itself. But all in all, as they say, all is well that ends well. I'm standing in front of India's Foreign Ministry, and this is the building where essentially all the key briefings were taking place. But also, we know that today in this very building, the Indian side confirmed that they have achieved an understanding with the Pakistani side, while the US side has been claiming it's a ceasefire. The focus from the Indian side is first, it's an understanding which hinges on Pakistan's future behavior, including, of course, making sure that there is no cross-border terrorism. And secondly, in terms of how Pakistan engages with India. With the 4 days of development, India has been able to put a new deterrence on Pakistan, given the fact that the strikes happened deep in Pakistani territories, in various air bases, which were destroyed in a major way. And also, the second, of course, remains the abeyance of Indus Water Treaty. That is a legal terminology I am using, but simplifying for our viewers, the Indus Water Treaty essentially stands dead today, and India is free to use the waters of the Indus. And the third, of course, is to send a message of zero tolerance on terrorism.
Indeed, Sudant, these are some pretty important implications. We'll of course discuss that, but I'm also told that we have Susan Thran, who's joining us live from New York. Susan, good morning to you. It is a deal that perhaps no one expected. About 2 hours ago, we saw Donald Trump's tweet where he said that the two nations, India and Pakistan, have now come to an agreement for a ceasefire. It must have been a very early morning for him in Florida. It would have been about 7:30 in the morning that the President of the United States of America was tweeting about the ceasefire between India and Pakistan. Give us a sense of what's in fact happened, because earlier the American position had been a lot more ambivalent to what was happening between India and Pakistan.
Yeah, Mohammed, it was indeed early mornings. And while President Trump did celebrate this, the Americans have always hoped that India and Pakistan would resolve this dispute bilaterally, and we saw that that happened, and have also said very publicly, Marco Rubio, J.D. Vance, the House Speaker, that ultimately terrorism has no place in India. So these have been the public sentiments and situations, but it does appear that talks with the Trump administration, because of its good relationship with both India and Pakistan, did happen, and ultimately this ceasefire took place. There were a series of events, Marco Rubio speaking to the Pakistani Army Chief Asim Munir, which is understood in Pakistan to be the power center, and ultimately we really did see that it shows. And then it was followed by his counterpart in Pakistan, and then we heard about the telephone conversations, of course, between Marco Rubio and his Indian counterpart, S Jaishankar. Today's statement was very interesting from the State Department. They said that they were very happy that this ceasefire has happened, and that the United States is willing to assist in any way possible moving forward. The wording of that really slightly suggests that, India and Pakistan ultimately, as they should, came together for this bilateral, and that the United States used its leverage to a certain extent, as a mediator, as a facilitator, which is very normal considering the great relationship that, first of all, President Trump has with Prime Minister Modi, and then, of course, the United States has to strategically monitor Pakistan as well, and the relationship that the United States somewhat has with Pakistan.
Indeed. Susan, do continue to stay on with us. Let me bring in my colleague Sudant Chughtai. Sudant, the fact that the Pakistani position changed dramatically, literally on its head since yesterday night, because yesterday the Pakistani Defence Minister had been stating that there is no other option for the Pakistanis except for an all-out war with India, and today Ishaqdar, in his tweet announcing the ceasefire, said that Pakistan does not want a war with India. What's changed? How did Pakistan suddenly begin to see reason?
Well, situation remained evolving and quite fluid as well. The commentary from Pakistan was also very contradictory, but there were back-channel talks, it looks like, with global capitals reaching out to New Delhi and Islamabad, both Riyadh and Washington. We saw the Saudi junior foreign minister visiting New Delhi and Islamabad. We also saw Marco Rubio speaking to both the Indian side, the Indian External Affairs Minister, and the Pakistani Army Chief, Mr. Munir. So essentially, there was a focus as to how both sides can have conversations, and at the end of the day, it looked like it worked out. But as India has been saying, it was bilateral, it was not mediated or brokered by any country, even though US has been claiming that they brokered the agreement between India and Pakistan.
Interesting. That's going to be a point of discussion in the days to come. Thank you very much, Sudant Chughtai, for joining us and getting us all those details there. We'll, of course, come back to you as this story develops. And also joining us on the broadcast, we've got retired Lieutenant General Rakesh Sharma, the former GOC, who is, of course, joining us on this broadcast. General Sharma, thank you very much indeed, sir, for taking time out and speaking to us here in WION. Now, considering the manner in which this war was escalating, especially the developments that had been happening in the last 24 hours, what do you think has now prodded the Pakistani establishment to agree to this ceasefire deal?
Thank you for inviting me, Mohammed. Look, if you follow the war of these 4 days, and I will call it a war, it was evident that, the Pakistanis in the first 2 days were trying to prod through as to try to find out our air bases and weaknesses in our air bases, and, attempt to strike them subsequently once weaknesses are found. But it was also evident that the Indians did not go in the same manner in responding to Pakistan. We kept stating that whatever we are doing is non-escalatory in nature, and we did not want escalation. We did not mobilize our forces across to the borders. So it was not something like what happened in Parakram in 2001. We restrained ourselves, and our targeting was more directed and more, focused towards strong targets. And it was evident after 2 days that, the Pakistanis' endeavors have not been exactly making credible success. And like, for example, previous night, yesterday night, they launched 400 odd drones from all over the sector, from Leh down to Sar Creek, and they did not meet credible advantage. However, on our own side, and I'll talk about geopolitics a little later,
Right.
but on our own side, we were able to hit very substantial targets. 2 nights ago, we targeted Rawalpindi, and from Rawalpindi down all along the Pakistan frontier down to close to Karachi. So, when we're targeting a long frontier, and it was a very deliberate and very focused, and it was, and there was success in it, substantial success in what we target. The Rawalpindi one landed in Rawalpindi. The one in Lahore destroyed the AD battery, the Chinese SQ-9 of the. So, that was one. In the last night, the areas that we hit were actually these 8 airfields, again, Rawalpindi, Islamabad, and down to Sakar, and, which is in Sindh. These were very strong targets, and they were very damaging targets for Pakistan. And if you follow the briefing that happened today evening, we have also listed a new set of 5-6 targets which were targeted today.
Right.
Like, for example, Skardu. Now, Skardu, if you see, is opposite Kargil, which is, in Baltistan. And targeting Skardu will be a very touchy affair for Pakistan. And all the other targets, Jacobabad, Gujranwala, were very strong targets. So ours were very focused and very powerful hits that we carried out to sort out the machinery, the wherewithal, and
Right.
the standing of Pakistan Armed Forces. So while the geopolitics is one side, we did not sow 400 odd drones all over the place,
Right.
many of them inert and decoys. We actually focused ourselves to targeting something strong.
Indeed, you've mentioned, very systematically, all the targets that India, in fact, struck in the course of the last 24, 48 hours, especially those air bases and their military bases. But the Pakistani strategy seemed to be much more diffuse in terms of what they were trying to do. They were using these saturation drone swarms and sending them across the border. What were the Pakistanis, purely from a military perspective, what were they trying to achieve with the tactics that they had deployed?
So it is obvious when the air war begins, both sides try to find out which is the weaknesses across there, and what we call it as SEAD, or suppression of enemy air defenses. So before you start targeting the opposing side, you want to suppress his air defenses so that you have a better leeway to carry out your tasks. The Pakistanis, it's apparent in first 2 nights, were trying to broad through using whole lot of swarms. Not one swarm together, but many swarms to all the airfields. The first day, you remember, it was starting from Avantipura down to Bhuj. Each one of the airfields around the western border was targeted by the Pakistanis to find as to where are we deploying our air defenses and how are we going to approach them. And most of these drones that they were deploying were decoys.
Right.
They didn't have, they were inert decoys. So, when you start firing, and they were also probably hoping that we fire our best of instrumentation, best of weapon system to take on these. So their initial broad failed because we did not actually show our hand, so as to say, and we were able to take them on using direct firing weapons like N70 guns, which are not the S400 variety of missile systems. And their initial first failure and the second day failure gave rise to their opinion that they cannot do anything strong. And when they tried a missile yesterday night, which is news are carrying it, the missile was downed in somewhere close to Sirsa.
Right.
So it is apparent that their procedures for achieving what they wanted to achieve, that is decimating some of our airfields, was not succeed because of the plans that the Indian side had to defend ourselves.
Interesting. And also, it's widely known that Pakistan probably has, ammunition where it can only fight a war for about 7 days. And it had been using essentially Chinese and also Turkish weaponry in the swarm drone swarm attacks that it was carrying out. Do you think the fact that probably Pakistan was running out of its weapons and more weapons were not coming forth from China and Turkey is what perhaps made the Pakistanis agree to this ceasefire without any preconditions?
I would like to agree with you on this one. See, the fact of the matter is never take your adversary lightly. When somebody says that we removed we destroyed the AD battery in Lahore, Pakistanis would have immediately moved forward to use some repair reserves and fill the voids. And similarly in Sialkot, so they would have every country has reserves of weapon systems to be brought out when something gets destroyed. So I won't say that they may not have resilience to last for very long time. A protracted war probably they can't take on. But to say that they can't even last 4 days or another 4 or another 10 days, I think that would be exaggerating a bit. The kind of collusion that Pakistan have with China and the kind of weaponry being provided by the Chinese is tremendous. And similarly, many other nations. So to say that they were lesser equipped and all, or they didn't have so much of wherewithal, it may not be right. I think they had, but you see, there is also an issue of how much. So, you can't allow everything to be finished off in 7 days and then say we have nothing left. So, yeah, Mohammed.
Before I get to the geopolitical question, General, I want to focus again on a military aspect of it, because there was a lot of chatter considering that Pakistan was using predominantly these Chinese weapons, that the Chinese wanted to test out their military hardware in active combat. The Chinese themselves haven't fought a war since 1978 when they had fought in Vietnam. So it was their military hardware that was being tested in this battle that they fought with India. In your assessment, how confident the Chinese feel about how their military hardware has performed in this contest with India?
Again, I think it's slightly premature to make judgments about Chinese hardware at this juncture, because the full hand has not been unveiled. But let me put it this way. I think it's about 7-8 years ago when Pakistanis stopped getting military wherewithal from the United States, which was the largest supplier over 6 decades to Pakistan. And they turned over themselves to take on the Chinese equipment. So what they had is substantially Chinese equipment. That's the only equipment they could try out. I mean, they could fire. It's not that they were Chinese are wanting to try out the equipment, but that's the only thing available with the Pakistanis, except for, say, F-16s, which they have, which is of the American vintage, etc. So it is, when you open the hand, they had either JF-17s in strength, which has been manufactured there, and JF-10s, which are Pakistani aircraft. F-16s usage, the Americans frown upon when the Pakistani used against India. There was a thought process that F-16s were used in post-Balakot in Swift-Tot, and the Pakistanis had to say, no, we didn't use it. So the point is they were per force had to use the Chinese equipment. How did it perform? Well, that's an issue which requires little more analysis as to how did we target and what was the protective mechanism the Pakistanis used. So I today will not like to write off and say, no, Chinese equipment is not good. I think we must take it Chinese equipment is as good as any other military equipment across the world. And when we have to fight it out, if it doesn't perform, that's a bonus for us.
Interesting. And now a geopolitical question, General, because, India has made it clear. India will not tolerate cross-border terrorism. In fact, this entire war happened because of the Pahalgam terror attack. But considering what has happened in the last week, do you think India has now rewritten the rules of engagement for Pakistan's war by 1,000 cuts? This Pakistani old strategy of trying to bleed India by 1,000 cuts. Do you think the Pakistani military and the deep state will now take a hard look at fighting this war with 1,000 cuts?
Look, if I believe in our analysis of Pakistan over 7 decades, I don't think there would be a great change of heart in what has happened in last 4 days. Pakistan has got 4 nations within Pakistan itself. These 4 nations are moving in different direction altogether. And to bind the four nations into one country, they require a glue. That glue is anti-Indianism.
Right.
If they lose anti-Indianism as the glue, then one fine day Pakistan will fracture itself into four countries. Balochistan, the way Balochistan happening, and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Sindh is also a restive province.
Absolutely.
So anti-Indianism is not going to go away. It is also the Raisat Yatre for Pakistan army. That army runs the country.
Absolutely.
Minute you say India is no more a threat and we are goody-goody with India, then you don't require the Pakistan army to rule that country. Then the politicians tend to take their prime space. Will the Pakistan army allow the politicians to rule the country on their own, and Pakistan army takes a back seat like in any democracy?
Right.
That will not happen. Because Pakistan army runs the country, is also in 7 decades also runs the industry.
Absolutely.
So it's their own livelihood that's at stake.
Indeed. I think you've summed it up so beautifully for us. Thank you very much indeed, General Rakesh Sharma, for joining us with that perspective there.
Thank you, Mohammed, for inviting me.